What are the sources of greenhouse gases?
Cars, factories, planes.
I mean, one airplane can fly across country and it's like 40 tons of carbon.
Cows. Yep. Turns out that worldwide, livestock are a major contributor to greenhouse gas pollution, right up there with cars, planes, and trains.
Here's why. Cows are fed corn and soy, which are grown using fertilizers made from fossil fuels. The food then has to be transported to the cows, which requires loads of fuel. And those cows pass a lot of gas, which may sound funny, but the methane they release is 23 times more harmful than carbon dioxide. And then there's even more fossil fuel burned while slaughtering the cows, which involves heavy machinery, and getting the food to the supermarket and then to you.
It's a very high energy process. The basic problem is, we have turned the modern dairy and beef cow into a fossil fuel guzzler.
So we wanted to know, just how powerful is the meat industry? Well, overall, meat has been estimated to contribute nearly $1 trillion to the US economy, roughly 6% of the GDP. Understandably, the relationship between meat manufacturers and the US government has many questioning whether those guidelines are actually in Americans' best interests. Especially considering that the USDA even runs programs which are intended to fund advertising for meat and dairy. The Atlantic reports that at least since 1977, efforts by the USDA to suggest decreasing meat consumption have been repeatedly derailed. Due to pressure from the meat industry, instead of telling consumers to eat less, they've been told to eat more lean meats. A lower recommended amount of meat would translate to a massive financial loss for meat suppliers.
Let's look at an all-American food, the hamburger. On average, we eat about 3 burgers per week. So let's see. If all 313 million Americans eat 3 burgers per week, that's 156 burgers per person per year. Altogether, that's more than 48 billion burgers every year. A quarter pounder at a fast food joint costs about $3 or $4. That's pretty cheap. But what we don't pay for at the counter, we end up paying for in other ways.
Take these steaks, for example. It takes a lot of water to produce them. In fact, nearly 10 times more than for a kilo of bread. Pretty wasteful, isn't it? Considering that 1.1 billion people in the world don't even have enough drinking water, and we use it to irrigate feed crops, water cows, and clean out cowsheds. To make the animals we want to eat grow fast, they're given concentrate. Usually soya from huge farms in Latin America. For farmland, rainforest is cut down, one of the habitats with the highest biodiversity on Earth, and then monocultures are grown there as far as the eye can see. Pesticides and fertilizers ensure that they grow fabulously, but as a result the soil is quickly exhausted, and then new fields are needed, and more pesticides and more fertilizer. That's bad for the environment and for the people who live and work there.
Cattle are castrated, have their horns chopped off, and are repeatedly branded, all without painkillers. At auctions, electric prods are used to torment the frightened animals into going where the workers want them to go.
This is the recommended daily diet, and this is how most Americans actually eat. We eat too much meat.
Leading health experts agree that we need to reduce the amount of animal products we eat to reduce our risk of obesity, heart disease, stroke, and some types of cancer.
It's predicted that there will be 9 billion people living on our planet by the year 2050. And what will happen with the meat production? The meat production will double. And of course, the greenhouse gas emissions will double too.
Well, we don't have to give up meat to change our impact. Cutting out just one burger per week would remove as much greenhouse gas pollution as taking your car off the road for 350 miles. If all Americans ate no meat or cheese one day a week, it would have the same climate change prevention effect as taking 7.6 million cars off the road for 1 year. And while it's more expensive, grass-fed beef does less damage to the environment.
This is a cooked flax. We're adding just a few pounds a day to their diet. And what it does is it rebalances their stomach, so they actually produce less methane.
The numbers that we've got so far on this farm, somewhere in the range of 12 to 15% improvement, reducing methane emissions.
Hi, I'm Chuck Dykeman, Willow Creek Farm, Belmont, New York. The reason I went organic, just a real good way of life. The cows are healthy.
Makes sense for our family and seems to make sense for the cattle, makes sense for the soil and the place we have around us.